I need to be calm. I need to remember to be calm. Because this is supposed to be a chill stream. Hello everyone. Welcome in. This is gonna test my ability to be calm. So yeah, hello everyone. I'm gonna put some calming music on. Wonderful. How are you all doing today? Oh, that's boring calm music. We need good calm music. I heard this is you quietly reading in your head. You've already had so much of that with the body doubling streams. Oh, I might turn off those redeems unless you guys promise not to do them, because today is supposed to be chill. For people to just listen, have it on in the background. Listen to, it's like an audiobook. Your own personal audiobook featuring Quinn. Thank you for the hydrates. No, it's okay. It's okay. Am I voice acting as well? Is that what's happening? Are you guys gonna be mean to me if I voice them wrong? Oh, let's get some different music in here. There we go. Kaz, there's a character called Kaz. Ayo. Okay. Let us read the blurb, or should we just get into it? Oh my god. Oh no. This is gonna be the death of me. Anyways. Let's read the blurb. First reading stream, kinda nervous. Criminal prodigy Kaz. Oh. Okay. Captain, I might need your help. Kaz Brecker, I'm guessing, has been offered wealth beyond his wildest dreams, but to claim it, he'll have to Brecker, okay. He'll have to pull off a seemingly impossible heist. Break into the notorious Ice Court, a military stronghold that has never been breached. Retrieve a hostage who could unleash magical havoc on the world. Survive long enough to collect his reward and spend it. It's been a while since I read out loud to people. Kaz needs a crew desperate enough to take on this suicide mission and dangerous enough to get the job done. And he knows exactly who. 6 of the deadliest outcasts the city has to offer. Together, they might be unstoppable if they don't kill each other first. In-game. Welcome in, Jado. I hope you're doing good today. Okay. Let's go to the first page. Welcome in, Quad. I hope you're doing good today. Hey, thank you for the lurk, Fake. I mean, it's supposed to be a calm reading stream. So it's gotta be calm. People have gotta be able to sleep to it. That was the idea, right? Calm reading stream? I know, but that. Making my way downtown, walking fast, faces past, and I'm homebound. Oh well, I got that. Okay. To Kate, secret weapon, unexpected friend. Okay, you guys can't see the map. It's a lot of weird names. And I need you. No, it's the other way around, Jada. Read out every location. Fierda, Ravka, Shuhan, Ferda, Fierda, Fauda. Lots of ocean. What's ocean and what's land? Oh, okay. I'm not describing the map. Why are there kennels? Incinerator shaft? Why? Why are you making me read? Okay, I'm gonna turn off the alerts. I mean, what do you want? Cause you're making fun of me for doing a calming voice. Do you want me to speak normally and we have the alerts on, or do you want this to be calm? We can do it one of two ways. Calm. Okay. I will turn off the alerts. No, Jada, it's not your fault. You weren't the only one who did it. I'm also gonna turn off the throwing at me. Yeah, it's probably best if people are trying to sleep. I'm turning off most of the alerts. Because most of them are... Okay. Okay. There we go. I need to grab a bookmark. Can I just use this as a bookmark? Hold on. Let me grab a bookmark. Or actually, I might... No, I can't reach a bookmark. Okay. I will grab a bookmark after after stream. I have actually, you know what I have? Post-it notes. Hell yeah, brother. Also, welcome in Darkness. I hope you didn't get today. 100 streams. Thank you so much for being here. Congrats on the streak. Okie dokie. Part 1. Shadow business. Now you're good, Jada, you're good. Oh god. Okay. Juiced. Is that name? Before I continue. Okay. Juiced and not juiced. Juiced had two problems, the moon and his mustache. He was supposed to be making his rounds at the Hoyt house, but for the last 15 minutes he'd been hovering around the southeast wall of the gardens, trying to think of something clever and romantic to say to Anya. If only Anya's eyes were blue like the sea, or green like an emerald. Instead, her eyes were brown, lovely, dreamy, melted chocolate brown? Rabbit fur brown? Just tell her she's got skin like moonlight, his friend Pieter had said. Girls love that. A perfect solution, but the Ketterdam weather was not cooperating. There'd been no breeze off the harbour that day, and the grey milk fog had wreathed the city's canals and crooked the alleys in damp. Even here, among the mansions of Geldstraat, the air hung thick with the smell of fish and bilgewater, and smoke from the refineries on the city's outer island had smeared the night sky in a briny haze. The full moon looked less like a jewel than a yellow blister in need of lancing. Maybe he could compliment Anya's laugh, except he'd never heard her laugh. He was never very good with jokes. Juice glanced at his reflection in one of the glass panels set into the double doors that led from the house to the side garden. His mother was right. Even in his new uniform, he still looked like a baby. Gently, he brushed his finger along his upper lip. If only his mustache would come in. It definitely felt thicker than yesterday. He'd been a guard in the Stadwatch less than 6 weeks, and it wasn't nearly as exciting as he'd hoped. He thought he'd be running down thieves in the barrel, or patrolling the harbours, getting first look at cargo coming in on the docks. But ever since the assassination of the ambassador at the town hall, the Merchant Council has been grumbling around security. So where was he? Stuck, walking in circles at some lucky mercher's house. Not just any mercher, though. Councilman Hoyd was about as high placed in Ketterdam government as a man could be. The kind of man who could make a career. Juice adjusted the set of his coat and rifle, then patted the weight. Juice adjusted the set of his coat and rifle, then patted the weight of the baton at his hip. Maybe Hoyd would take a liking to him. Sharp-eyed and quick with the cudgel, Hoyd would say. That fellow deserves a promotion. Sergeant Juice de Van Pol, he whispered, savouring the sound of the words. Captain Juice de Van Pol. Stop gawking at yourself. Juice whirled, cheeks going hot as Henk and Rutger strode into the side garden. They were both older, bigger, and broader of shoulder than Juice, and they were house guards, private sergeants of Councilman Hoyd. That meant they wore his pale green livery, carried fancy rifles from Novyi Zem, and never let Juice forget that he was a lowly grunt from the City Watch. Petting that bit of fuzz isn't going to make it grow any faster, Rutger said with a loud laugh. Juice tried to summon some dignity. I need to finish my rounds. Rutger elbowed Henk. That means he's going to stick his head in the Grisha workshop to get a good look at his girl. Oh, Anya, won't you use your Grisha magic to make my moustache grow? Henk mocked. Juice turned on his heel, cheeks burning, and strode down the eastern side of the house. They'd been teasing him ever since he arrived. If it hadn't been for Anya, he probably would have pleaded with his captain for a reassignment. He and Anya only ever exchanged a few words on his rounds, but she was always the best part of his night. And he had to admit, he liked Hoyd's house, too. The few peeks he'd managed to through the windows, Hoyd had one of the grandest mansions on the Geldstraat. Floors set with gleaming squares of black and white stone, shining dark wood walls lit by brown glass chandeliers that floated like a jellyfish near the coffered ceilings. Sorry. I need to breathe. Sometimes Juiced liked to pretend that it was his house, that he was a rich merchant just out for a stroll through this fine garden. Before he rounded the corner, Juice tried to take a deep breath. Or Juice took a deep breath. Anya, your eyes are brown like tree bark? He'd think of something. He was better off being spontaneous anyway. He was surprised to see the glass panelled doors to the Grisha workshop open. More than the hand-painted blue tiles in the kitchen or the mantels laden with potted tulips, this workshop was a testimony to Hoaid's wealth. Grisha indentures didn't come cheap, and Hoaid had 3 of them. But Yuri wasn't seated at the long work table, and Anya was nowhere to be seen. Only Retvenko was there, sprawled out on a chair, in dark blue robes, eyes shut, a book open on his chest. Juiced hovered in the doorway, then cleared his throat. These doors should be shut and locked at night. House is like a furnace, Retvenko drawled, without opening his eyes, his Ravkan accent thick and rolling. Tell Hoaid I stopped sweating. I closed doors. Retvenko was a squalor, older than the other Grisha indentures, his hair shot through with silver. There were rumours he'd fought for the losing side in Ravka's civil war and had fled to Kerch after the fighting. I'd be happy to present your complaints to Councilman Hoaid, Juice lied. The house was always overheated, as if Hoaid was under obligation to burn coal. But Juice wasn't going to be the one to mention it. Until then, you bring news of Yuri? Retvenko interrupted, finally opening his heavily hooded eyes. Juice glanced uneasily at the bowls of red grapes and heaps of burgundy velvet on the work table. Yuri had been working on bleeding colour from the fruit into curtains for Mistress Hoaid, but he'd fallen badly ill a few days ago, and Juice hadn't seen him since. Dust had begun to gather on the velvet, and the grapes were going bad. I haven't heard anything. Of course you hear nothing. Too busy strutting around in stupid purple uniform. What's wrong with his uniform? And why did Retvenko even have to be here? He was Hoaid's personal squalor, and often travelled with the merchants' most precious cargoes, guaranteed favourable winds to bring the ships safely and quickly to harbour. Why couldn't he be away at sea now? I think Yuri may be quarantined. So helpful, Retvenko said with a sneer. You can stop craning your neck like a hopeful goose, he added. Anya's gone. Juice felt his face heat again. Where is she? He asked, trying to sound authoritative. She should be in after dark. 1 hour ago, Hoaid takes her. Same as night he came for Yuri. What do you mean he came for Yuri? Yuri fell ill. Hoaid comes for Yuri. Yuri comes back sick. 2 days later, Yuri vanishes for good. Now Anya. For good? Maybe there was an emergency. If someone needed to be healed, first Yuri, now Anya, and I will be next. And no one will notice except poor little Officer Juiced. Go now. If Councilman Hoaid, Retvenko raised an arm, and a gust of air slammed Juice backwards. Juice scrambles to keep his footing, grabbing for the door frame. I said, now. Retvenko etched a circle into the air, and the door slammed shut. Juice lets go, just in time to avoid having his finger smashed, and toppled into the side garden. He got to his feet as quickly as he could, wiping muck from his uniform, shame squirming in his belly. One of the glass panes in the door had cracked from the force, though through it he saw the squalor smirking. That's counting against your indenture, Juice said, pointing to the ruined plane. He hated how small and petty his voice sounded. Retvenko waved his hand, and the doors trembled on their hinges, Without meaning to, Juice took a step back. "Go and make your rounds, little watchdog," Retvenko called. "That went well," snickered Rutger, leaning against the garden wall. "How long had he been standing there?" "Don't you have something better to do than follow me around?" Juice asked. "All guards are to report to the boathouse, even you. Or are you too busy making friends?" "I was asking him to shut the door." Rutger shook his head. "You don't ask, you tell. They're servants, not honored guests." Juice fell into step beside him, inside still churning with humiliation. The worst part was that Rutger was right. Retvinka had no business talking to him that way. But what was Juice supposed to do? Even if he had the courage to get into a fight with a squaller, it would be like brawling with an expensive vase. The Grisha weren't just servants, they were Hoaid's treasured possessions. What had Retvenko meant about Yuri and Anya being taken away? Had he been covering for Anya? Grisha indentures were kept in the house for good reason. To walk the streets without protection was to risk getting plucked up by a slaver and never seen again. Maybe she's meeting someone, Juice speculated miserably. His thoughts were interrupted by the blaze of light and activity down by the boathouse that faced the canal. Across the water he could see other fine merchant houses, tall, slender. The sky... No? Where did I get that from? Tall and slender, the tidy gables of their rooftops making a dark silhouette against the night sky. Their gardens and boathouses lit by glowing lanterns. A few weeks before, Juiced had been told that Hoaid's boathouse would be undergoing improvements, and to strike it from his rounds. "Hi, Keely." "Hi, Quad. I will hydrate." Welcome in. I hope you guys are doing good. Gives me a moment to breathe as well. Okay. But when he and Rutger entered, he saw no paint or scaffolding. The gondels and oars had been pushed up against the walls. No other house guards were there in the sea green livery, and Juice recognized two sturdy watch guards in purple. But most of the interior was taken up by a huge box, a kind of freestanding cell that looked as if it were made from reinforced steel. It seems thick with rivets, a huge window embedded in one of its walls. The glass had a wavy bent, and through it, Juice could see a girl seated at a table, clutching her red silks tight around her. Behind her, a stout watch guard stood at attention. Anya, Juice realized with a start. Her brown eyes were wide and frightened, her skin pale. The little boy sitting across from her looked doubly terrified. His hair was sleek tousled, and his legs dangled from the chair, kicking nervously at the air. "Why all the guards?" asked Juice. There had to be more than 10 of them crowded in the boathouse. Councilman Hoaid was there too, along with another merchant Juice didn't know, both of them dressed in mercer black. Juice stood up straighter when he saw they were talking to the captain of Stadwatch. He hoped he'd got all the garden mud off his uniform. "What is this?" Rutger shrugged. "Who cares? It's a break in the routine." Juice looked back through the glass. Anya was staring out at him, her gaze unfocused. The day he'd arrived at Hoaid's house, she'd healed a bruise on his cheek. It had been nothing, the yellow-green remnants of a crack he'd taken to the face during a training exercise, but apparently Hoaid had caught sight of it and didn't like his guards looking like thugs. Juiced had been sent to the Grisha workshop, and Anya had sat him down in a bright square of late winter sunlight. Her cool fingers had passed over his skin, and though the itch had been terrible, bare seconds later it was as if the bruise had never been. When Juice thanked her, Anya had smiled, and Juice was lost. He knew his cause was hopeless. Even if she'd had any interest in him, he could never afford to buy her indenture from Hoed, and she would never marry unless Hoed decreed it. But it hadn't stopped him from dropping by to say hello or bring her little gifts. She'd liked the map of Kirch best, a whimsical drawing of their island nation, surrounded by mermaids swimming in the true sea and ships blown across by winds depicted as fat-cheeked men. It was a cheap souvenir, the kind tourists bought along East Stove, but it had seemed to please her. Now he risked raising a hand in greeting. Anya showed no reaction. "She can't see you, moron," laughed Rutger. "The glass is mirrored on the other side." Juiced's cheeks pinked. "How was I to know that? Open your eyes and pay attention for once. First Yuri, now Anya. Why do they need a Grisha healer? Is that boy injured? He looks fine to me." The captain and sorry, I did that a bit too quick. "Is that boy injured? He looks fine to me." The captain and Hoed seemed to reach some kind of agreement. Through the glass, Just saw Hoed enter the cell and give the boy an encouraging pat. There must have been vents in the cell, because he heard Hoed say, "Be a brave lad, and there's a few Krug in it for you too." Then he grabbed Anya's chin with a liver-spotted hand. She tensed, and Just's gut tightened. Hoed gave Anya's head a little shake. "Do as you're told, and this will soon be over. Yeah?" She gave a small, tight smile. "Of course, uncle." Hoyd whispered a few words to the guard behind Anya, then stepped out. The door shut with a loud clang, and Hoyd slid a heavy lock into place. Hoyd and the other merchant took position almost directly in front of Juiced and Rutger. The merchant Juiced didn't know said, The merchant Juice didn't know said, "You're sure this is wise? The girl is a corporalnik after what happened to your fabricator. If it was Redvenko, I'd be worried, but Anya has a sweet disposition. She's a healer, not prone to aggression." "And you've lowered the dose?" "Yes. But we're agreed that if we have the same result as the fabricator, the council will compensate me. I can't be asked to bear that expense." When the merchant nodded, Hoed signaled to the captain. "Proceed. The same results as the fabricator." Redvenko claimed Yuri had vanished. Was that what he'd meant? "Sergeant," said the captain, "are you ready?" The guard inside the cell replied, "Yes, sir." He drew a knife. Juice swallowed hard. "First test," said the captain. The guard bent forwards and told the boy to roll up his sleeve. The boy obeyed and stuck out his arm, popping the thumb of his other hand into his mouth. "I'm going to read ahead and just check that it doesn't get too violent, because Twitch might smite me." Okay. Hopefully I add in-game to it and it's fine. It's not too bad. Too old for that, thought Juiced. But the boy must be very scared. Juiced had slept with a sock bear until he was nearly 14, a fact his older brothers had mocked mercilessly. "This will sting just a bit," said the guard. The boy kept his thumb in his mouth and nodded, eyes round. "This really isn't necessary," said Anya. "Quiet, please," said Hoed. The guard gave the boy a pat and then slashed a bright red cut across his forearm, in-game. "Welcome in, Foom. I hope you didn't get today." The boy started crying immediately. Anya tried to rise from her chair, but the guard placed a stern hand on her shoulder. "It's all right, Sergeant," said Hoed. "Let her heal him." Anya leaned forward, taking the boy's hand gently. "Shh," she said, softly. "Let me help." Will it hurt? The boy gulped. She smiled. Not at all, just a little itch. Try to hold still for me. Juice found himself leaning closer. He'd never actually seen Anya heal someone. Anya removed a handkerchief from her sleeve and wiped away the excess blood. Then her fingers brushed carefully over the boy's wound. Juice watched in astonishment as the skin slowly seemed to reform and knit together. A few minutes later, the boy grinned and held out his arm. It looked a bit red, but was otherwise smooth and unmarked. Was that magic? I had to add it. I don't want to get smited. Anya tapped him on the nose. Of a sort. The same magic your own body works when given the time and a bit of bandage. The boy looked almost disappointed. Good, good, Howard said impatiently. Now the parent. Juice frowned. He'd never heard that word. The captain signaled to his sergeant. Second sequence. Okay, let me read ahead again. Okay. Put out your arm, the sergeant said to the boy once again. The boy shook his head. I don't like that part. Do it. The boy's lower lip quivered, but he put out his arm. The guard cut him once more, in game. Then he placed a small wax paper envelope on the table in front of Anya. Swallow the contents of the packet, Howard instructed Anya. What is it? She asked, voice trembling. That isn't your concern. What is it? She repeated. It's not going to kill you. We're just going to ask you to perform some simple task to just judge the drug's effects. A sergeant is there to make sure you do only what you're told, and no more. Understood? Her jaw set, but she nodded. No one will harm you, said Howard, but remember, if you hurt the sergeant, you have no way out of that cell. The doors are locked from the outside. What is that stuff? Whispered Juice. Don't know, said Rutger. What do you know? He muttered. Enough to keep my trap shut? Juice scowled. With a shaking hand, Anya lifted the little wax envelope and opened the flap. Go on, said Howard. She tipped her head back and swallowed the powder. For a moment she sat, waiting, lips pressed together. Is it just Gerda? She asked hopefully. Juice found himself hoping too. Gerda was nothing to fear, a stimulant everyone in the Stadwatch chewed to stay awake on late watches. What does it taste like? Howard asked. Like Gerda, but sweeter. Anya inhaled sharply. Her hand seized the table. Her pupils dilating enough that her eyes looked nearly black. Oh, she said, sighing. It was nearly a purr. The guard tightened his grip on her shoulder. How do you feel? She stared at the mirror and smiled, her tongue peeking through her white teeth, stained like rust. Juice felt suddenly cold, just as it was with the fabricator, murmured the merchant. Heal the boy, Howard commanded. She waved her hand through the air, the gesture almost dismissive, and the cut on the boy's arm sealed instantly. The blood lifted briefly from his skin in droplets of red, then vanished. His skin looked perfectly smooth, all traces of blood or redness gone, in-game. The boy beamed. That was definitely magic. It feels like magic, Anya said with that same eerie smile. She didn't touch him, marveled the captain. Anya, said Howard, listen closely. We're going to tell the guard to perform the next test now. Hummed Anya. Sergeant, said Howard, cut off the boy's thumb. In game. Am I allowed to read this on stream? Bye bye, Fake. Take care. Hi, Bisquiata. I'm. Should I put content classifications on this? Violence/graphic depictions. Okay. I think I'm allowed to read it as long as I put the content classification on it. That would make me feel safer. And then I'll take it off for the next stream. The boy howled and started to cry again. He shoved his hands beneath his legs to protect them. I should stop this, Juice thought. I should find a way to protect her, both of them. But what then? He was a nobody, new to the Stadwich, new to this house. Besides, he discovered in a burst of shame, I want to keep my job. Anya merely smiled and tilted her head back so she was looking at the sergeant. Shoot the glass. What did she say? Asked the merchant. Sergeant, the captain barked out. Shoot the glass, Anya repeated. The sergeant's face went slack. He cocked his head to one side as if listening to a distant melody, then unslung his rifle and aimed it at the observation window. Get down, someone yelled. Juice threw himself to the ground, covering his head as the rapid hammer of gunfire filled his ears and bits of glass rained down on his hands and back. His thoughts were a panicked clamor. His mind tried to deny it, but he knew what he had just seen. Anya had commanded the sergeant to shoot the glass. She made him do it. But that couldn't be. Grisha Korporalki specialized in the human body. They could stop your heart, slow your breathing, snap your bones. They couldn't get inside your head. For a moment there was silence. Then Juice was on his feet with everyone else reaching for his rifle. Hoid and the captain shouted at the same time, Subdue her! Shoot her! Do you know how much money she's worth? Hoid reported. Someone restrain her. Do not shoot. Anya raised her hands, red sleeves spread wide. Wait, she said. Juice's panic vanished. He knew he'd been frightened, but his fear was a distant thing. He was filled with expectation. He wasn't sure what was coming, or when, only that it would arrive, and that it was essential he'd be ready to meet it. It might be bad or good, he didn't really care. His heart was free of worry or desire. He longed for nothing, wanted nothing, his mind silent, his breath steady. He only needed to wait. He saw Anya rise and pick up the little boy. He heard her crooning tenderly to him, some Ravkan lullaby. Open the door and come in, Hoed, she said. Just heard the words, understood them, forgot them. Hoed walked to the door and slid the bolt free. He entered the steel cell. Do as you're told, and this will soon be over. Yeah? Anya murmured with a smile. Her eyes were black and bottomless pools. Her skin was alight, glowing, incandescent. A thought flickered through Juiced's mind, beautiful as the moon. Anya shifted the boy's weight in her arms. Don't look, she murmured against his hair. Now, she said to Hoed, pick up the knife. Chapter 2. I'm guessing it's Inej. Sorry. People couldn't watch. Because I changed it, so I've changed it back and I'll just reword stuff that might get flagged. Okay. Kaz Brecker didn't need a reason. Those were the words whispered on the streets of Ketterdam. In the taverns and the coffee houses, in the dark and bleeding alleys of the pleasure district known as the Barrel. The boy then called Dirty Hands didn't need a reason any more than he needed permission to break a leg, sever an alliance, or change a man's fortune with the turn of a card. Of course they were wrong. Inez considered as she crossed the bridge over the black waters of the Biers Canal to the deserted main square that fronted the exchange. Every act of violence was deliberate, and every favor came with enough strings attached to stage a puppet show. Kaz always had his reasons. Inez could just never be sure they were good ones, especially tonight. Inez checked her knives, silently reciting their names as she always did when she thought there might be trouble. It was a practical habit, but a comfort too. The blades were her companions. She liked knowing they were ready for whatever the night might bring. She saw Kaz and the others gathered near the great stone arch. She saw Kaz and the others gathered near the great stone arch that marked the eastern entrance to the exchange. 3 words had been carved into the rock above them. Engent, Vorhent, Almhent. Industry, integrity, prosperity. She kept close to the shuttered shop fronts that lined the square, avoiding the pockets of flickering gaslight cast by the street lamps. As she moved, she inventoried the crew Kaz had brought with him: Derricks, Rotti, Muzzin, and Keeg. Derricks, Rotti, Muzzin, and Keeg, and Anika and Pim, and his chosen seconds for tonight's parley, Jasper and Big Bolliger. What a wild name. They jostled and bumped each other, laughing, stamping their feet against the cold snap that had surprised the city this week. The last gasp of winter before spring began in earnest. They were all bruisers and brawlers, culled from the younger members of the Dregs, the people that Kaz trusted most. Inez noted the glint of knives tucked in their belts, lead pipes, weighted chains, axe handles studded with rusty nails, and here and there the oily gleam of a gun barrel. She slipped silently into the ranks, scanning the shadows near the exchange for signs of black tip spies. 3 ships, Jasper was saying. The Shoe sent them. They were just sitting in First Harbour, cannons out, red flags flying, stuffed to the sails with gold. Big Bolliger gave a low whistle. Would have liked to see that. Would have liked to steal that, replied Jester. Half the merchant council was down there flapping and squawking, trying to figure out what to do. Don't they want the Shoe paying their debts? Big Bolliger asked. Kaz shook his head, dark hair glinting in the lamplight. He was a collection of hard lines and tailored edges. Sharp jaw, lean build, wool coat snug across his shoulders. Yes and no, he said in his rock salt rasp. I ain't gonna be able to do a rasp. It's always good to have a country in debt to you. Makes for friendlier negotiations. Maybe the Shoe are done being friendly, said Jasper. They didn't have to send all that treasure at once. You think they're stuck in that trade ambassador? Kaz's eyes found Inej unerringly in the crowd. Ketterdam had been buzzing around the assassination of the ambassador for weeks. It had nearly destroyed Kirch-Zemeni relations. I'm so sorry, gang. I suck at reading out loud. And sent the merchant council into an uproar. The Zemeni blamed the Kirch suspected the Shu. Kaz didn't care who was responsible. The murder fascinated him because he couldn't figure out how it had been accomplished. In game. Okay. I stumble over my words a lot when I read. So I will be repeating half sentences. Or sentences. Okay. In one of the busiest corridors of Stadthal, in full view of more than a dozen government officials, the Zemeni trade ambassador had stepped into a washroom. No one else had entered or left, but when his aide knocked on the door a few minutes later, there had been no answer. When they'd broken down the door, they found the ambassador face down on the white tiles, a knife in his back, the taps still running. Kaz had sent Inej to investigate the premises after hours. The washroom had no other entrance, no windows or vents, and even Inej hadn't mastered the art of squeezing herself through the plumbing. Yet the Zemeni ambassador was dead. In-game, Kaz hated a puzzle he couldn't solve, and he and Inej had concocted 100 theories to account for the murder, none of which satisfied. But they had more pressing problems tonight. She saw him signal to Jasper and Big Bolliger to divest themselves of weapons. Street law indicated that for a parley of this kind, each lieutenant be seconded by 2 of his foot soldiers, and that they are unarmed parley. The word felt like a deception, strangely prim and antique. No matter what street law decreed, this night smelled like violence. Go on, give those guns over, Derek said to Jasper. With a great sigh, Jasper removed the gun belts at his hips. She had to admit he looked less himself without them. The Zemeni sharpshooter was long-limbed, brown-skinned, constantly in motion. He pressed his lips to the pearl handles of his prized revolvers, bestowing each with a mournful kiss. Take good care of my babies, Jasper said as he handed them over to Derek's. If I see a single scratch or nickel on those, if I see a single scratch or nick on those, I'll spell forgive me on your chest in bullet holes. In-game. You wouldn't waste the ammo. And he'd be dead halfway through forgive, Big Bolliger said, as he dropped the hatchet, a switchblade, and his preferred weapon, a thick chain awaited with a heavy padlock, in Rotti's expectant hands. Jasper rolled his eyes. It's about sending a message. What's the point of a dead guy with Forge written on his chest? Compromise, Kaz said. I'm sorry, does the trick, and use fewer bullets. Dirks laughed, but Inej noted that he cradled Jasper's revolvers very gently. What about that? Jasper asked, gesturing to Kaz's walking stick. Kaz's laugh was low and humorless. Who'd deny a poor cripple his cane? If the cripple is you, then any man with sense. Then it's a good thing we're meeting the Geels. Kaz drew a watch from his vest pocket. It's almost midnight. Inej turned to her Inej turned her gaze to the exchange. It was little more than a large rectangular courtyard surrounded by warehouses and shipping offices, but during the day it was the heart of Ketterdam. bustling with wealthy merchants buying and selling shares in the trade voyages that passed through the city's ports. Now it was nearly 12 bells, and the exchange was deserted but for the guards who patrolled the perimeter and the rooftops. They'd been bribed to look the other way during tonight's parley. The exchange was one of the few remaining parts of the city that hadn't been divided up and claimed in the ceaseless skirmishes between Ketterdam's rival gangs. It was supposed to be neutral territory, but it didn't feel neutral to Inej. It felt like the hush of the woods before the snare yanks tight and the rabbit starts to scream. It felt like a trap. "This is a mistake," she said. Big Bolliger started. He hadn't known she was standing there. Inej heard the names of the dregs, preferred for her whispers among their ranks. The Wraith. "Giles is up to something." "Of course he is," said Kaz. His voice had the rough, abraded texture of stone against stone. Inej always wondered if he sounded that way as a little boy. If he'd ever been a little boy. "Then why come here tonight?" "Because this is the way Per Haskell wants it." Old man, old ways, Inej thought, but didn't say. And she suspected the other dregs were thinking the same thing. "He's going to get us all killed," she said. Jesper stretched his long arms overhead and grinned, his teeth white against his dark skin. He had yet to give up his rifle, and the silhouette of it across his back made him resemble a gawky, long-limbed bird. "Statistically, he'll probably get only some of us killed." "It's not something to joke about," she replied. The look Kaz cast her was amused. She knew how she sounded, stern, fussy, like an old crone making dire pronouncements from her porch. She didn't like it, but she also knew she was right. Besides, old women must know something, or they wouldn't live to gather wrinkles and yell from their front steps. "Jasper isn't making a joke, Inej," said Kaz. "He's figuring out the odds." Big Bolliger cracked his huge knuckles. "Well, I've got lager and a skillet of eggs waiting for me at the Coopermon poop coop." I'm gonna clip that. Sorry, gang. I'm going to clip that. That was quite funny. Okay. Well, I've got Okay. Well, I've got lager and a skillet of eggs waiting for me at the Cooper, so I can't be the one to die tonight. "Care to place a wager?" Jasper asked. "I'm not going to bet on my own death." Kaz flipped his hat onto his head and ran his gloved fingers along the brim in a quick salute. "Why not, Bolliger? We do it every day." I'm starting to like this Kaz guy. He was right. Inej's debt to Per Haskell meant she gambled her life every time she took on a new job or assignment, every time she left her room at the slat. Tonight was no different. Kaz struck his walking stick against the cobblestone as the bells from the church of Barter began to chime. The group fell silent. The time for talk was done. "Giles isn't smart, but he's just bright enough to be trouble," said Kaz. "No matter what you hear, you don't join the fray unless I give the command. Stay sharp." Then he gave Inej a brief nod and stay hidden. "No mourners," Jesper said as he tossed his rifle to Rotty. "No funerals," the rest of the dregs murmured in reply. "No mourners. Did I say that? Sorry. Among them, it passed for good luck. Before Inej could melt into the shadows, Kaz tapped her arm with his crow's head cane. Keep a watch on the rooftop guards. Gilles may have them in his pocket. Then Inej began, but Kaz was already gone. I've lost my place. Oh. Inej threw up her hands in frustration. She had 100 questions, but as usual, Kaz was keeping a strangle hold on the answers. She jogged towards the canal-facing wall of the exchange. Only the lieutenants and their seconds were allowed to enter during the parley. But just in case the Black Tips got any ideas, the other dregs would be waiting right outside the eastern arch with weapons at the ready. She knew Gilles would have his crew of heavily armed Black Tips gathered at the western entrance. Inej would find her own way in. The rules of fair play among the gangs were from Per Haskell's time. Besides, she was the Wraith. The only law that applied to her was gravity, and some days she defied that too. The lower levels of the exchange was dedicated to windowless warehouses, so Inej located a drain pipe to shin up. Something made her hesitate before she wrapped her hand around it. She drew a bone light from her pocket and gave it a shake, casting a pale green glow over the pipe. It was slick with oil. She followed the wall, seeking another option, and found a stone cornice bearing a statue of Kirch's 3 flying fishes within reach. She stood on her toes and tentatively felt along the top of the cornice. It had been covered in ground glass. I am expected, she thought, with grim pleasure. She joined up with the dregs less than 2 years ago, just a day after her 15th birthday. It had been a matter of survival, but it gratified her to know that, in such a short time, she'd become someone to take precautions against. Though if the Black Tips thought tricks like this would keep the Wraith from her goal, they were sadly mistaken. She drew 2 climbing spikes from the pockets of her kilted vest and wedged first one, then the other. Is that grammatically correct? Wedged first one, then the other between the bricks of the wall as she hoisted herself higher, her questing feet finding the smallest holds and ridges in the stone. As a child learning the high wire, she'd gone barefoot. But the streets of Ketterdam were too cold and wet for that. After a few bad spills, she'd paid a Grisha fabricator working in secret out of a gin shop on I'm so sorry. On the Windstrat to make her a pair of leather slippers with nubbly rubber soles. Thank you for the follow, welcome in. Sorry, I probably should have turned follower alerts off as well. I hope you're doing well. Why isn't VTube Studio working? Okay. They were perfectly fitted to her feet and gripped any surface with surety. On the second story, I told you we needed more glitter. Okay. Good. And Bon, okay. On the second story of the exchange, she hoisted herself onto a window ledge just wide enough to perch on. Kaz had done his best to reach her, but she didn't quite have his way with breaking and entering, and it took her a few tries to finesse the lock. Finally, she heard a satisfying click, and the window swung open on a deserted office. Its walls covered in maps marked with trade routes, and chalkboards listed share prices and the names of ships. She ducked inside refastened the latch, and picked her way past the empty desks with their neat stacks of orders and tallies. She crossed to a slender set of doors and stepped onto a balcony that overlooked the central courtyard of the exchange. Each of the shipping offices had one. From here, callers announced new voyages and arrivals of inventory, or hung the black flag that indicated that a ship had been lost at sea with all its cargo. The floor of the exchange would erupt into a flurry of trades. Runners would spread the word through the city, and the price of goods, futures, and shares in outgoing voyages would rise or fall. But tonight, all was silent. A silence. A wind came in off the harbour, bringing the smell of A wind came in off the harbour, bringing the smell of the sea, ruffling the stray hairs that had escaped the braided coil at the nape of Inez's neck. Down the square, she saw the sway of lamplight and heard the thump of Kaz's cane on the stone as he and his seconds made their way across the square. On the opposite side, she glimpsed another set of lanterns headed towards them. The black tips had arrived. Inez raises her... it's past tense. I need to remember it's past tense. Inez raised her hood. She pulled herself onto the railing and leaped soundlessly to the neighbouring balcony, then the next, tracking Kaz and the others around the square, staying as close as she could. His dark coat rippled in the salt breeze, his limp more pronounced tonight, as it always was when the weather turned cold. I see, so that's why he uses a walking stick. She could hear Jasper keeping up a lively stream of conversation, and Big Bolliger's low, rumbling chuckle. As she drew nearer to the other side of the square, Inez saw that Giles had chosen to bring Elzinga and Uman, exactly as she had predicted. Inez knew the strengths and weaknesses of every member of the Black Tips, not to mention Harley's Pointers, the Liddles, the Razorgulls, the Dime Lions, and every other gang working on the streets of Ketterdam. It was her job to know that Giles trusted Elzinga because they'd come up through the ranks of the Black Tips together, and because Elzinga was built like a stack of boulders, nearly 7 feet tall, dense with muscle. His wide, mashed-in face jammed low on a neck thick as pylon. She was suddenly glad Big Bolliger was with Kaz. That Kaz had chosen Jasper to be one of his seconds was no surprise. Twitchy as Jasper was, with or without his revolvers, he was at his best in a fight, and she knew he'd do anything for Kaz. She'd been less sure when Kaz had insisted on Big Bolliger as well. Big Bull was a bouncer at the Crow Club, perfectly suited to tossing out drunks and wasters, but too heavy on his feet to be much use when it came to a real tussle. Still, at least he was tall enough to look Elzinga in the eye. Inez didn't want to think too much on Giel's other second. Uman made her nervous. He wasn't as physically as intimidating as Elzinga. In fact, Uman was made like a scarecrow, not scrawny, but as if beneath his clothes his body had been put together at wrong angles. Word was, he'd once crushed a man's skull with his bare hands, wiped his palms clean on his shirt front, and kept right on drinking. Inez tried to quiet the unease rolling through her, and listened as Giles and Kaz made a small talk in the square while their seconds patted each of them down to make sure no one was carrying. Naughty, Jasper said as he removed a tiny knife from Elzinga's sleeve and tossed it across the square. Clear, declared Big Bolliger as he finished patting down Giles and moved on to Uman. Oh, Giles is a person. Sorry. Kaz and Giles discussed the weather, the suspicion that the Coopermon was serving watered-down drinks now that the rent had been raised, dancing around the real reason they'd come here tonight. In theory, they would chat, make their apologies, agree to respect the boundaries of the Fifth Harbour, then all head out to find a drink together. At least, that's what Per Haskell had insisted. But what does Per Haskell know? Inej thought as she looked for the guards patrolling the rooftop above, trying to pick out their shapes in the dark. Haskell ran the dregs, but these days he preferred to sit in the warmth of his room, drinking lukewarm lager, building model ships, and telling long stories of his exploits to anyone who would listen. He seemed to think territory wars could be settled as they once had been, with a short scuffle and a friendly handshake, but every one of Inej's senses told her that it was not how this was going to play out. Her father would have said the shadows were about their business tonight. Something bad was going to happen here. Kaz stood with both gloved hands resting on the carved crow's head of his cane. He looked totally at ease, his narrow face obscured by the brim of his hat. Most gang members in the barrel loved flash. Gaudy waistcoats, watch fobs studded with false gems. Oh, sorry. Trousers in every print and pattern imaginable. Kaz was the exception. The picture of restraint, his dark vests and trousers simply cut and tailored along severed lines. At first, she thought it was a matter of taste, but she'd come to understand that it was a joke he'd played on the upstanding merchants. He'd enjoyed looking like one of them. I'm a businessman, he told her. No more, no less. You're a thief, Kaz. Isn't that what I just said? It's because there's instrumental in the background. Clip. Clip that. Hello. Okay, let's begin reading again. Now he looked like some kind of priest to preach to a group of circus performers. A young priest, she thought, with another pang of unease. No. Sorry, call me baby. You pointed it out. And you, baby, here's my number. So call me baby. A young priest, she thought, with another pang of unease. Kaz had called Giles Kaz had called Giles old and washed up, but he certainly didn't seem that way tonight. The black tips lieutenant might have wrinkles creasing the corners of his eyes, and burgeoning jowls beneath his sideburns, but he looked confident, experienced. Next to him Kaz looked, well, 17. Let's be fair, yeah? All we want is a bit more scrub, Giles said, tapping in the mirrored buttons of his lime green waistcoat. Oh, tapping the, not tapping in the. It's not fair for you to cull every spend-happy tourist stepping off pleasure. It's not fair for you to cull every spend-happy tourist stepping off a pleasure boat at Fifth Harbour. Fifth Harbour is ours, Giles, Kaz replied. The dregs get first crack at the pigeons who come looking for a little fun. Gil shook his head. You're a young one, Breca, he said with an indulgent laugh. Maybe you don't understand how these things work. The harbours belong to the city, and we have as much right to them as anyone. We've all got a living to make. The reading's going good, thank you. Technically, that was true, but Fifth Harbour had been useless and all but abandoned by the city when Kaz had taken it over. He'd had it dredged and then built out of the docks and the quay, and he'd had to mortgage the Crow Club to do it. Pascal had railed at him and called him a fool for the expense, but eventually he'd relented. According to Kaz, the old man's exact words had been, "Take all that rope and hang yourself in-game." It's a major in-game. But the endeavour had paid for itself in less than a year. Now Fifth Harbour offered berths to merchant ships, as well as boats from all over the world carrying tourists and soldiers eager to see the sights and sample the pleasures of Ketterdam. The dregs got first try at all of them, steering them and their wallets into brothels, taverns, and gambling dens owned by the gang. Fifth Harbour had made the old man very rich, and cemented the dregs as real players in the barrel in a way that not even the success of the Crow Club had. But with profits came unwanted attention. Gills and the Black Tips had been making trouble for the dregs all year. Encroaching on Fifth Harbour, picking off pigeons that weren't rightfully theirs. Fifth Harbour is ours, Kaz repeated. It isn't up for negotiation. You're cutting into our traffic from the docks, and you intercepted a shipment of Jurda that should have docked 2 nights ago. Don't know what you're talking about. I know it comes easy, Gills, but try not to play dumb with me. Gills took a step forward. Jasper and Big Bolliger tensed. Quit flexing, boy, Gills said. We all know the old man doesn't have the stomach for a real brawl. Kaz's laugh was dry as the rustle of dead leaves. But I'm the one at your table, Gills, and I'm not here for a taste. You want a war? I'll make sure you eat your fill. And what if you're not around, Breca? Everyone knows you're the spine of Haskell's operation. Snap it, and the dregs collapse. Jasper snorted. Stomach, spine. What's next? Spleen? Oh, Jesus! Thank you for the follow. Welcome in. I hope you're enjoying your stay. Shut it, Uman snarled. The rules of parley dictated that only the lieutenants could speak once negotiations had begun. Jasper mouthed, "Sorry," and elaborately pantomimed, locking his lips shut. "I'm fairly sure you're threatening me, Gills." Kaz said, "But I want to be certain before I decide what to do about it." "Sure of yourself, aren't you, Breca?" "Myself and nothing else." Gills burst out laughing and elbowed Uman. "Listen to this cocky little piece of crap. Breca, you don't own these streets. Kids like you are fleas. A new crop of you turns up every few years to annoy your betters until a big dog decides to scratch. And let me tell you, I'm about tired of the itch." He crosses his arms, pleasure rolling off him in smug waves. "What if I told you there are 2 guards with city-issue rifles pointed at you and your boys right now?" Inej's stomach dropped. Was that what Kaz had meant when he said Gills might have the guards in his pocket? Kaz glanced up at the roof. "Hiring city guards to do your killing? I'd say that's an expensive proposition for a gang like the Black Tips. I'm not sure I believe your coffers could support it." Inej climbed onto the railing and launched herself from the safety of the balcony, heading for the roof. If they survived the night, she was going to kill Kaz. In-game. There were always 2 guards from the Stadwatch posted on the roof of the exchange. A few crew from the Dregs and the Black Tips had ensured they wouldn't interfere with the parley. A common enough transaction, but Giles was implying something very different. Had he really managed to bribe a city guards to play sniper for him? If so, the Dregs' odds of surviving this night had just dwindled to a knife's point. Like most of the buildings in Ketterdam, the exchange had sharply gabled roof to keep off heavy rain, so the guards patrolled the city tops. No? So the guards patrolled the rooftop via a narrow walkway that overlooked the courtyard. Sorry, I need to. Okay, I'm gonna take a drink. My voice is. Oh my god. Makes you realize. Oh, okay. Inez ignored it. It was easy you're going, but would leave her too exposed. Instead, she scaled halfway up the slick roof tiles and started crawling. Her body tilted at a precarious angle, moving like a spider as she kept one eye on the guard's walkway and one ear on the conversation below. Maybe Giles was bluffing. Or maybe 2 guards were hunched over the railings right now with Kez or Jasper or Big Bolliger in their sights. Took some doing, Giles admitted. We're a small operation right now, and city guards don't come cheap, but it'll be worth it for the price. That being me? That being you. I'm flattered. The Dregs won't last a week without you. I'd give them a month on sheer momentum. The thought rattled noisily around Inez's head. If Cass was gone, would I stay, or would I skip out on my debt? Take my chances with Per Haskell's enforcers. If she didn't move faster, she might well find out. Smug little slum rat, Giles laughed. I can't wait to wipe that look off your face. So do it, Kaz said. Inez risked a look down. His voice had changed, all humour gone. Should I have them put a bullet in your good leg, Brecca? Where are the guards? Inez thought, picking up her pace. She raced across the steep pitch of the gable. The exchange stretched nearly the length of a city block. There was too much territory to cover. Stop talking, Giles. Tell them to shoot. Kaz, said Jasper nervously. Go on, find your balls and give the order. What games was Kaz playing? Has he expected this? Had he expected this? Had he just assumed Inez would find her way to the guards in time? She glanced down again. Giles radiated anticipation. He took a deep breath, puffing out his chest. Inez's steps faltered, and she had to fight not to go sliding straight off the edge of the roof. He's going to do it. I'm going to watch Kaz die in-game. Fire! Giles shouted. A gunshot split the air. Big Bolliger let loose a cry and crumpled to the ground. Damn it! Shouted Jasper, dropping to one knee beside Bolliger and pressing his hand to the bullet wound. As the big man moaned. You worthless podge, he yelled at Giles. You just violated neutral territory. Nothing to say you didn't shoot first, Giles replied. And who's going to know? None of you are walking out of here. Giles' voice sounded too high. He was trying to maintain his composure. But Inez could hear panic pulsing against his words. The startled wing beat of a frightened bird. Why? Moments before, he'd been all bluster. That was when Inez saw Kaz still hadn't moved. You don't look well, Giles. I'm just fine, he said, but he wasn't. He looked pale and shaky. His eyes were darting right and left as if searching for the shadowed walkway of the roof. "Are you?" Kaz asked conversationally. "Things aren't going quite as planned, are they?" "Kaz," Jesper said. "Bolga's bleeding bad." "Good," Kaz said, ignoring him. "Kaz, he needs a medic." Kaz spared the wounded man the barest glance. "What he needs to do is to stop his belly aching and be glad I didn't have Holst to take him down with a headshot." Even from above, Inesh saw Gil's flinch. "That's the guard's name, isn't it?" "Willem Holst. And the Bert Van Dal, the 2 city guards on duty tonight, the ones you emptied the Black Tip's coffers to bribe?" Gil said nothing. "Willem Holst," Cass said loudly, his voice floating up to the roof. "Likes to gamble almost as much as Jesper does, so your money held a lot of appeal. But Holst had much bigger problems. Let's call them urges. I won't go into much detail. A secret's not like a coin. It doesn't keep its value in spending. You'll just have to trust me when I say this one would turn even your stomach. Isn't that right, Holst?" The response was another gunshot. It struck the cobblestone near Gil's feet. Gil released a shocked bleat and sprang back. This time, Inej had a better chance to track the origin of the gunfire. The shot had come from somewhere near the west side of the building. If Holst was there, that meant the other guard, Bert Van Dal, would be on the east side. Had Kaz managed to neutralize him, too? Or was he counting on her? She sped over the gables. "Just shoot him, Holst, in-game," Gills bellowed, desperation sawing at his voice. "Shoot him in the head, in-game." Kaz snorted in disgust. "Do you really think that secret would die with me? Go on, Holst," he called. "Put a bullet in my skull. There will be messengers sprinting to your wife and your watch captain's door before I hit the ground." No shot came. "How?" Gil said bitterly. "How did you even know who would be on duty tonight? I had to pay through the gills to get that roster. You couldn't have outbid me. Let's say my currency carries more sway. Money is money. I trade in information, Gills. The thing men do when they think no one is looking. Shame holds more value than coin ever can." He was grandstanding, and Neige saw that, buying her time as she leaped over the slate shingles. "Are you worrying about the second guard? Good old Bert Van Dal?" Kaz asked. "Maybe he's up there right now, wondering what he should do. Shoot me? In-game. Shoot Holst? In-game. Or maybe I'll go to him. Or no. Or maybe I got him too. And he's getting ready to blow a hole in your chest, Gills." He leaned in as if he and Gills were sharing a great secret. Why not give Van Dal the order and find out? Gills opened and closed his mouth like a carp, then bellowed, "Van Dal!" Just as Van Dal parted his lips to answer, Inej slipped up behind him and placed a blade to his throat in-game. She'd barely had time to pick out his shadow and slide onto the roof tiles. Saints, Kaz liked to cut it close. "Shh," she whispered in Van Dal's ear. She gave him a tiny jab on the side so that he could feel the point of her second dagger pressed against his kidney. "Please," he moaned. Whoa. "I like it when men beg," she said, "but this isn't the time for it." "Calm down, Inej." Anyways. Below, she could see Gil's chest rising and falling with panicked breaths. "Van Dal!" he shouted again. There was rage on his face when he turned back to Kaz. "Always one step ahead, aren't you? Gills, when it comes to you, I'd say I have a running start." But Gills just smiled, a tiny smile, tight and satisfied. A victor's smile, Inej realized with fresh fear. The race isn't over yet. Gills reached into his jacket and pulled out a heavy black pistol. "Finally," Kaz said, "the big reveal. Now Jesper can stop kneeling over Bolliger like a wet-eyed woman." Jesper stared at the gun with stunned, furious eyes. Bolliger searched him. "Oh, Big Bull, you idiot," he groaned. Inej couldn't believe what she was seeing. The guard in her arms released a tiny squeak. In her anger and surprise, she'd accidentally tightened her grip. "Relax," she said, easing her hold. But all saints, she wanted to put a knife through something. Big Bolliger had been the one to pat down Giles. There was no way he could have missed the pistol. He had betrayed them. Was that why Kaz had insisted on bringing Big Bolliger here tonight? So he'd have public confirmation that Big Bolliger had gone over to the Black Tips. It was certainly why he'd let Holst put a bullet in Bolliger's gun. So why? But so what? Now everyone knew Big Bol was a traitor. Kaz still had a gun pointed at his chest. In-game. Giles smirked. Kaz Brecker, the great escape artist. How are you going to wriggle your way out of this one? Going out the same way I came in. Kaz ignored the pistol, turning his attention to the big man lying on the ground. Do you know what your problem is, Bolliger? He jabbed at the wound in Big Bolliger's stomach with the tip of his cane. That wasn't a rhetorical question. Do you know what your biggest problem is? Bolliger mewled. No. Give me a guess, Cass hissed. Big Bol said nothing, just released another trembling whimper. All right, I'll tell you. You're lazy. I know it. Everyone knows it. So I had to ask myself why the laziest bouncer was getting up early twice a week to walk 2 extra miles to Silla's Fry for breakfast, especially when the eggs are so much better at the Coopermon. Big Bol becomes an early riser. The Black Tips start throwing their weight around Fifth Harbour and then intercept our biggest shipment of Jorda. It wasn't a tough connection to make. He sighed and said to Giles, "This is what happens when stupid people start making big plans, yeah?" "Doesn't matter much now, does it?" replied Giles. "This gets ugly, I'm shooting from close range. Maybe your guards get me or my guys, but no way you're going to dodge this bullet." Cass stepped into the barrel of the gun so that it was pressed directly into his chest. "No way at all, Giles. You think I won't do it? Oh, I think you'd do it gladly, with a song in your black heart. But you won't. Not tonight." Gil's finger twitched on the trigger. "Kaz," Jesper said, "this whole shoot me thing is starting to concern me." Uman didn't bother to object to Jester's mouthing off this time. One man was down. Neutral territory had been violated. The sharp tang of gunpowder already hung in the air, and along with it a question, unspoken in the quiet, as if the Reaper himself awaited the answer. How much blood will be shed tonight? In the distance, a siren railed. 19 Burstrat, Kaz said. Giles had been shifting slightly from foot to foot. Now he went very still. "That's your girl's address, isn't it, Giles?" Giles swallowed. "Don't have a girl." "Oh, yes, you do," crooned Kaz. "She's pretty, too. Well, pretty enough for a fink like you. Seems sweet. You love her, don't you?" Even from the rooftop, Inej could see the sheen of sweat on Giles' waxen face. "Of course you do. No one that fine should ever have looked twice at a barrel scum like you. But she's different. She finds you charming. Sure sign of madness, if you ask me. But love is strange that way. Does she like to rest her pretty head on your shoulder? Listen to you talk about your day?" Giles looked at Kaz as if he was finally seeing him for the first time. The boy he'd been talking to had been cocky, reckless, easily amused, but not frightened. Not really. Now the monster was here, dead-eyed and unafraid. Kaz Brecker was gone, and Dirty Hands had come to see the rough work done. "She lives at 19 Burstrat," Kaz said in his gravelly rasp. 3 floors up, geraniums in the window boxes. There are 2 dregs waiting outside her door right now, and if I don't walk out of here whole and feeling righteous, they will set that place alight from the floor to the rooftop. It will go up in seconds, burning from both ends, with poor Elise trapped in the middle. Her blonde hair will catch first, like the wick of a candle." "You're bluffing," said Giles, but his pistol hand was trembling. Kaz lifted his head and inhaled deeply. "Getting late now. You heard the siren. I smell the harbor on the wind, sea and salt, maybe. And maybe, is that smoke I smell, too?" There was pleasure in his voice. "Oh, saints, Kaz," Inej thought miserably. "What have you done now?" Again, Giles' fingers twitched on the trigger. and Inej tensed. I know, Giles, I know, Kaz said sympathetically. All that planning and scheming and bribing for nothing. That's what you're thinking right now. How bad it will feel to walk home knowing what you've lost. How angry your boss is going to be when you show up empty handed and that much poorer for it. How satisfying it would be to put a bullet in my heart. You can do it. Pull the trigger. We can all go down together. They can take our bodies out to the Reaper's barge for burning, like all paupers do go. Or you can take the blow to your pride, go back to Bertrand, lay your head on in your girl's lap, fall asleep still breathing, and dream of revenge. It's up to you, Giles. Do we get to go home tonight? Giles searched Kaz's gaze, and whatever he saw there made his shoulders sag. Inej was surprised to feel a pang of pity for him. I'm starting to like this Kaz guy.
You like Kaz?
Yeah.
He's an okay character, I guess.
What? He's my favourite.
Wait till you see Nina, she's my favorite.
Wow. Dude, these chapters are chunky.
Yeah, they're a bit long. Some of them at the end of the book are even longer.
Oh dear lord. Sorry, gang, Captain walked in. Okay. Inej was surprised to feel a pang of pity for him. He'd walked into this place buoyed on bravado, a survivor, a champion of the barrel. He'd leave as another victim of Kaz Brecker. You'll get what's coming for you someday, Brecker. I will, said Kaz, if there's any justice in the world. And we all know how likely that is. Gil let his arm drop. The pistol hung uselessly by his side. Kaz stepped back, brushing the front of his shirt where the gun barrel had rested. Go and tell your general to keep the black tips out of Fifth Harbour, and that we expect him to make amends of the shipment of Jurda we lost, plus 500% of drawing steel on neutral ground, and 5%, not 500, plus 5% of drawing steel on neutral ground, and 5% more of being such a spectacular bunch of asses. Then Kaz's cane swung in a sharp arc. Giles screamed as his wrist bone shattered. The gun clattered to the paving stones. I stood down, cried Giles, cradling his hand. I stood down. You draw on me again, and I'll break both of your wrists. And you'll have to hire someone to help you take a piss. Kaz tipped the brim of his hat up with the head of his cane. Or maybe you can get the lovely Elise to do it for you. Kaz crouched down beside Bolliger. The big man whimpered. Look at me, Bolliger. Assuming you don't bleed to death tonight, you have until sunset tomorrow to get out of Ketterdam. I hear you're anywhere near the city limits, and they'll find you stuffed in a keg at Scylla's Fry, in-game. Then he looked at Giles. You help Bolliger, or I find out he's running with the black tips. Don't think I won't come after you. Please, Kaz, moaned Bolliger. You had a home, and you put a wrecking ball through the front door, Bolliger. Don't look for sympathy from me. He rose and checked his pocket watch. I didn't expect this to go on so long. I'd best be on my way, or poor Elise will be getting a trifle warm. Giles shook his head. There's something wrong with you, Brecker. I don't know what you are, but you're not made right. Kaz cocked his head to one side. You're from the suburbs, aren't you, Giles? Came to the city to try your luck? He smoothed his lapel with one gloved hand. Well, I'm the kind of bastard they only manufacture in the barrels. Despite the loaded gun at the black tip's feet, Kaz turned his back on them and limped across the cobblestone towards the eastern arch. Jesper squatted down beside Bolliger, gave him a gentle pat on the cheek. Idiot, he said sadly, and followed Kaz out of the exchange. From the roof, Inej continued to watch as Umin picked up and holstered Gil's gun, and the black tips said a few quiet words to each other. Don't leave, Big Don't leave, Big Bollabobo. Don't leave, Big Bolliger begged. Don't leave me. He tried to cling to the cuff of Gil's trousers. Gil shook him off. They left him curled on his side, leaking blood onto the cobblestone. Inez plucked Vandal's rifle from his hands before she released him. Go home, she told the guard. He cast a single terrified glance over his shoulder and sprinted off down the walkway. Far below, Big Ball had started trying to drag himself across the floor of the exchange. He might be stupid enough to cross Kaz Brecker, but he'd survived this long in the barrel, and that took will. He might make it. Help him, a voice inside her said. Until a few moments ago, he had been a brother in arms. It seemed wrong to leave him alone. She could go to him, offer to put him out of his misery quickly, hold his hand as he passed. She could fetch a medic to save him. Instead, she spoke a quick prayer in the language of her saints, and began the steep climb down the outer wall. Inez pitied the boy who might die alone with no one to comfort him in the last hours, or who might live and spend his life as an exile. But the night's work wasn't over yet, and the Wraith didn't have time for traitors. Oh my god, wait, we get a Kaz chapter. Hell yeah. That chapter alone took like 40 minutes. Jesus Christ. Alright. I'm happy that we get a Kaz chapter. Because so far he might be my favourite character. I think he's the main one, isn't he? Don't know. Right. Cheers greeted Kaz as he emerged from the eastern arch, Jesper trailing behind him and, if Kaz was any judge, already working himself into a sulk. Dirix, Rotti, and the others charged at them, whooping and shouting, Jesper's revolvers held aloft. The crew had gotten the barest... Yeah, hell yeah. The VOD will be up, so... If you missed a bit, you can go back and watch the VOD. I hope I'm doing alright. The crew had gotten the barest glimpse of the proceedings with Giels, but they heard most of it. Now they were chanting, "The Burstrad is on fire! The draggers don't have no water! I can't believe he just turned tail!" jeered Rotti. He had a loaded pistol in his hand. "Tell us what you had on the guard," Dirix begged. "Can't be the usual stuff. I heard about a guy in Slocan who liked to roll around in apple syrup and then get too..." "I'm not talking," said Kaz. "Holst could prove useful in the future." The mood was jittery, and their laughter and the frantic exhilaration that came with their disaster Some of them had expected a fight and were still itching for one, but Kaz knew there was more to it. And he hadn't missed the fact that no one had mentioned Big Bolliger's name. They'd been badly shaken by his betrayal, both the revelation and the way Kaz had delivered punishment. Beneath all that jostling and whooping, there was fear. Good. Kaz relied on the fact. The dregs were all murderers, thieves, and liars. He just had to make sure they didn't make a habit of lying to him. Kaz dispatched 2 of them to try and keep an eye on Big Ball and make sure that if he made it to his feet, he left the city. The rest could return to the slat of the Crow Club to drink off their worry. Sorry. Oh my god, my neck's hurting. Maybe I need to do shorter reading streams. I don't know if I can go. I think... Unless I... Hold on, let me try a different position. Oh no, that looks really weird with... Okay, let's try this. Make some trouble and spread the word of the night's events. They'd tell what they'd seen embroider the rest, and with every retelling, Dirty Hands would get crazier and more ruthless. But Kaz had business to attend to, and his first stop would be Fifth Harbour. Jasper stepped into his path. "You should have let me know about Big Bolliger," he said in a furious whisper. "Don't tell me my business, Jess. If you think I'm dirty too? If I thought you were dirty, you'd be holding your guts in on the floor of the exchange like Big Ball, so stop running your mouth." In game. Oh!
Hi.
Sorry, I didn't mean to yelp. Someone was right. Why right in my... I'm happy we get cash chat.
Excited.
Everyone say hi to Captain. Nobody's saying. Oh, there you go. There you go, hi from Foom.
Hi.
Right. Are you good? I'm being leaned over. Can I help you?
I'm just wondering where you were.
Yeah, page 39.
Pretty good.
Oh, it's because I stumble over my words all the time.
Well, that's fine. What about you?
Right. Jasper shook his head. Armchair Quinn model when... Don't give me ideas. Jasper shook his head and rested his hands on the revolvers he had reclaimed from Derek's. Whenever he got cranky, he liked to lay his hands on a gun, like a child seeking the comfort of a favoured doll. It would have been easy enough to make peace. Kaz could have told Jasper that he knew he wasn't dirty, reminded him that he trusted him enough to make it him his only real second in a fight that could have gone badly wrong tonight. Instead, he said, "Go on, Jasper. There's a line of credit waiting for you at the Crow Club. Play till morning or your luck runs out. Whichever comes first." Jasper scowled, but he couldn't keep the hungry gleam from his eyes. "Another bribe? I'm a creature of habit." "Lucky for you, I am too," he hesitated long enough to say. "You don't want us with you? Gil's boys are going to be riled after that." "Let them come," Kaz said, and turned down Nemstrat without another word. If you couldn't walk by yourself through Ketterdam after dark, then you might as well just hang a sign that read "soft" around your neck and lie down for a beating. He couldn't feel the Dreg's eyes on his back as he could, sorry. He could feel the Dreg's eyes on his back as he headed over the bridge. He didn't need to hear their whispers to know what they would say. They wanted to drink with him, hear him explain how he'd known Big Bolliger had gone over to the Black Tips. Listen to him describe the look in Gil's eyes when he dropped his pistol. But they'd never get it from Kaz. And if they didn't like it, they could find another crew to run with. No matter what they thought of him, they'd walk a little taller tonight. It was why they stayed, why they gave their best approximation of loyalty for him. When he'd officially become a member of the Dregs, he'd been 12, and the gang had been a laughingstock. Street kids and washed-up cadgers running shell games and penny port cons out of a run-down house. Sorry. In the worst part. Ooh. Gang, we might have to finish reading in a second because we can do something else for the last hour though. And I'm enjoying it, but oh my god, I don't think I can read for much longer. When he'd officially become a member of the Dregs, he'd been 12, and the gang had been a laughingstock. Street kids and washed-up cadgers running shell games and pennyport cons out of a run-down house in the worst part of the barrel. But he hadn't needed a great gang, just one he could make great, one that needed him. Now they had their own territory, their own gambling hall, and that run-down house that had become the slat, a dry, warm place to get a hot meal or hole up when you were wounded. Now the dregs were feared. Kaz had given them that. He didn't owe them small talk on top of it. Besides, Jesper would smooth it all over. A few drinks in and a few hands up, and the sharpshooter's good nature would return. He held a grudge about as well as he held his liquor, and he had a gift for making Kaz's victories sound like they belonged to everyone. As Kaz headed out down one of the little canals that would take him past Fifth Harbour, he realized he felt saints. He almost felt hopeful. Maybe he should see a medic. The black tips had been nipping at his heels for weeks, and now he'd forced them to play their hand. His leg wasn't too bad either, despite the winter chill. The ache was always there, but tonight it was just a dull throb. Still, a part of him wondered if the parlay was some sort of test Per Haskell sent for him. Haskell was perfectly capable of convincing himself that he was a genius, making the dregs prosper, especially if one of his cronies was whispering in his ear. That idea didn't sit easy, but Kaz could worry about Per Haskell tomorrow. For now, he'd make sure everything was running on schedule at the harbour, and then head home to the slat for some much-needed sleep. He knew Inej was shadowing him. She'd been with him all the way from the exchange. He didn't call out to her. She would make herself visible when she was good and ready. Usually, he liked the quiet. In fact, he would have happily sewn most people's lips shut. But when she wanted to, Inej had a way of making you feel her silence. It tugged at your edges. Kaz managed to endure it all the way past the iron railings of Sent's Bridge, the grating covered in little bits of rope tied in elaborate knots. Sailors' prayers for safe return from sea. Superstitious rot. Finally, he gave in and said, "Spit it out already, Wraith." Her voice came from the dark. "You didn't send anyone to Burstrand." "Why would I? If Giels doesn't get there in time, no one's setting fires at 19 Burstrand. I heard the siren. A happy accident. I take inspiration where I find it." "You were bluffing then. She was never in danger." Kaz shrugged, unwilling to give her an answer. Inej was always trying to wring little bits of decency from him. Or decency. When everyone knows you're a monster, you needn't waste time doing every monstrous thing. Why did you even agree to the meet if you knew it was a setup? She was somewhere to the right of him, moving without a sound. He'd heard other members of the gang say she moved like a cat, but he suspected cats would sit attentively at her feet to learn her methods. "I'd call the night a success," he said. "Wouldn't you? You were nearly killed. So was Jesper." Giels emptied the black tips coffers, paying useless bribes. We've outed a traitor, re-established our claim on Fifth Harbour, and I don't have a scratch on me. It was a good night." "How long have you known about Big Bolliger?" "Weeks. We're going to be short-staffed. That reminds me. Let Roger go." "Why? There's no one like him at the tables. Lots of sobs know their way around a deck of cards." "Rojak is a little too quick. He's skimming. He's a good dealer, and he has a family to provide for. You could give him a warning, take a finger. Then he wouldn't be a good dealer anymore, would he?" When a dealer was caught skimming money from a gambling hall, the floor boss would cut off one of his pinky fingers. It was one of those ridiculous punishments that had somehow become codified in the gangs. It threw off the skimmer's balance and forced him to relearn his shuffle, and showed any future employer that he had to be watched. But it also made him clumsy at the tables. It meant he was focusing on simple things like the mechanics of the deal instead of watching the players. Kaz couldn't see Inej's face in the dark, but he sensed her disapproval. Greed is your god, Kaz. He almost laughed at that. No, Inej, greed bows to me. It is my servant and my lover. And what god do you serve, then? Whichever will grant me good fortune. I don't think gods work that way. I don't think I care. She blew out an exasperated breath. Despite everything she'd been through, Inej still believed her Sulai saints were watching over her. Kaz knew it, and for some reason, he loved to rile her. He wished he could just read her expression now. There was always something so satisfying about the little furrow between her black brows. How did you know I would get to Vandal in time? She asked. Because you always do. You should have given me more warning. I thought your saints would appreciate the challenge. For a while she said nothing. Then from somewhere behind him, he heard her. Men mock the gods until they need them, Kaz. He didn't see her go, only sensed her absence. Kaz gave an irritated shake of his head. To say he trusted Inej would be stretching the point, but he could admit to himself that he'd come to rely on her. It had been a gut decision to pay off her indenture with Menagerie, and it had cost the dregs sorely. Per Haskell had needed convincing, but Inej was one of the best investments Kaz had ever made. That she was so very good at remaining unseen made her an excellent thief of secrets, the best in the barrel. But the fact that she could simply erase herself bothered him. She didn't even have a scent. All people carried scents. And those scents told stories. The hint of a carbolic on a woman's fingers, or wood smoke in her hair. The wet wool of a man's suit, or the tinge of gunpowder lingering in his shirt cuffs. But not Inej. She somehow mastered invisibility. She was a valuable asset, so why couldn't she just do her job and spare him her moods? Suddenly, Kaz knew he wasn't alone. He paused, listening. He'd cut through a tight alley split by a murky canal. There were no street lamps here, and little foot traffic. Nothing but the bright moon and the small boats bumping against their moorings. He'd dropped his guard, let his mind give in to distraction. A man's dark shape appeared at the head of the alley. What business? Kaz asked. The shape lunged at him. Kaz swung his cane in a low arc. It should have made direct contact with his attacker's legs, but instead it sailed through empty space. Kaz stumbled, thrown off balance by the force of his swing. Then somehow the man was standing right in front of him. A fist connected with Kaz's jaw. Kaz shook off the stars that rocketed through his head. He spun back around and swung again, but no one was there. The weighted head of Kaz's walking stick whooshed through nothing and cracked against the wall. Kaz felt the cane torn from his hands by someone on his right. Was there more of them? And then a man stepped through the wall. Kaz's mind stuttered and reeled, trying to explain what he was seeing as a cluster of mist became a cloak, boots, the pale flash of a face. Ghosts, Kaz thought. A boy's fear, but it came with absolute surety. Geordie had come for his vengeance at last. It's time to pay your debts, Kaz. You never get something for nothing. The thought passed through Kaz's mind in a humiliating, gibbering wave of panic. Then the phantom was upon him, and he felt the sharp stab of a needle in his neck. A ghost with a syringe? Fool, he thought, and then he was in the dark. Ooh. Right. I will continue. I found an alright position. I just need to take a minute. Reading for 3 hours straight aloud is hard. How are you all enjoying the book, though? I'm quite enjoying it. If you couldn't tell, I've gotten really, really engrossed now. I'm stuttering less and I'm more consistent. Yeah. Alrighty. Let me continue. Yeah, I hope you're all enjoying it. Okay. Kaz woke to the sharp scent of ammonia. His head jerked back as he returned fully to consciousness. The old man in front of him wore the robes of a university medic. He had a bottle of waft salts in his hand that he was waving beneath Kaz's nose. The stink was nearly unbearable. "Get away from me," Kaz rasped. The medic eyed him dispassionately, returning the waft salts to their leather pouch. Kaz flexed his fingers, but that was all he could do. He had been shackled to a chair with his arms behind his back. Whatever they'd injected him with had left him groggy. The medic moved aside, and Kaz blinked twice, trying to clear his vision and make sense of the absurd luxury of his surroundings. He'd expected to wake in the den of the Black Tips or some other rival gang, but this wasn't cheap barrel flash. A squat decked out like this took real money. Mahogany panels dense with carvings of frothing waves and flying fish, shelves lined with books, leaded windows, and he was fairly sure that was a real decapel. One of those demure oil portraits of a lady with a book open in her lap and a lamb laying at her feet. The man observing him from behind a broad desk had the prosperous look of a mercer. I need... Oh, alright, I'll finish this page and then I need to go and grab food. Where was I? But if this was his house, why were there armed members of the Stadwatch guarding the door? Damn it, Kaz thought. Am I under arrest? If so, this merch was in for a surprise. Thanks to Inej, he had information on every judge, bailiff, and high councilman in Kerch. He'd be out of his cell before sunrise, except he wasn't in a cell. He was chained to a chair. So what the hell was going on? I'm gonna leave you with that as I go and grab food. I will be back in a moment. Remember to stay fed, stay hydrated, and stretch. And I will see you all in a second. Okay. We can now read for the rest of the stream. Also, 60 streams. Thank you. Oh my god. Thank you so much for being here, and congratulations on the streak. Okay. Let's go where we left off. The man was in his 40s, with a gaunt but handsome face and a hairline making a determined retreat from his forehead. When Kaz met his gaze, the man cleared his throat and pressed his fingers together. "Mr. Brecker, I hope you're not feeling too poorly." "Get this old canker away from me. I feel fine." The merch gave a nod to the medic. "You may go. Please send me your bill. And I would, of course, appreciate your discretion in this matter." The medic secured his bag and exited the room. As he did, the mercer rose and picked up a sheaf of papers from his desk. He wore the perfectly cut frock coat and vest of all Kerch merchants, dark, refined, deliberately staid. But the pocket watch and tie pin told Kaz all he needed to know. Heavy links of laurel leaves made up the watch's gold fob, and the pin was massive, perfect ruby. "I'm going to pry that fat jewel from its setting and jab the pin right through your merchant neck in-game for chaining me to a chair," Kaz thought. But all he said was "Van Eck." The man nodded. No bow, of course. Merchants didn't bow to scum from the barrel. You know me, then. Kaz knew the symbols and the jewels of all Kirch merchant houses. Van Eck's crest was the red laurel. It didn't take a professor to make the connection. I know you, he said. You're one of those merch crusaders always trying to clean up the barrel. Van Eck gave another small nod. I try to find men honest work. Kaz laughed. What's the difference between wagering at the Crow Club and speculating on the floor of the exchange? One is theft, and the other is commerce. When a man loses his money, he may have trouble telling them apart. The barrel is a den of filth, vice, of violence. How many of the ships you send sailing out of the Ketterdam harbours never return? That doesn't. Out of 5, Van Eck. 1 out of every 5 vessels you send seeking coffee and jurda and bolts of silk sink to the bottom of the sea, crashes on the rocks, falls prey to pirates. 1 out of 5 crews dead, their bodies lost to foreign waters, food for deep sea fishes. Let's not speak of violence. I won't argue ethics with a stripling from the barrel. Kaz didn't really expect him to. He was just stalling for time as he tested the tightness of the cuffs around his wrists. He let his fingers feel along the length of the chain as far as they were able, still puzzling over where Van Eck had brought him. Though Kaz had never met the man himself, he had had cause to learn the layout of Van Eck's house inside out and out. Wherever they were, it wasn't a merchant's mansion. Since you didn't bring me here to philosophize, what business? It was the question spoken at the opening of any meeting. A greeting from a peer, not a plea from a prisoner. I have a proposition for you. Rather, the council does. Kaz hid his surprise. Does the Merchant Council begin all negotiations with a beating? Consider it a warning and a demonstration. Kaz remembered the shape from the alley, the way it had appeared and disappeared like a ghost. 4D. He gave himself an internal shake. No, not 4D, you podge. Focus. They nabbed him because he'd been flushed off a victory and distracted. This was his punishment, and it wasn't a mistake he'd make again. That doesn't explain the phantom. For now, he pushed the thought aside. What possible use would the Merchant Council have for me? Van Eck thumbed through the papers in his hand. You were first arrested at 10, he said, scanning the page. Everyone remembers his first time. Twice again that year. Twice at 11. You were picked up when the Stad Watch roosted a gambling hall when you were 14. But you haven't served any time since. It was true. No one had managed to pinch on Kaz in 3 years. I cleaned up, Kaz said. Found honest work. Live a life of industry and prayer. Don't blaspheme. Van Eck said mildly, but his eyes flashed briefly with anger. A man of faith, Kaz noted, and his mind sorted through everything he knew about Van Eck. Prosperous, pious, a widower recently remarried to a bride not much older than Kaz himself. And of course, there was the mystery of Van Eck's son. Van Eck continued paging through the file. You run... Are my headphones connected? Yeah, no, they are. Oh, sorry. Van Eck continued paging through the file. You run book on prize fights, horses, and your own games of chance. You've been a floor boss at the Crow Club for more than 2 years. You're the youngest to ever run a betting shop, and you've doubled its profits in that time. You're a blackmailer. I broker information. A con artist. I create opportunity. A board and a murderer. I don't run wars, and I kill for a cause. And what cause is that? Same as yours. Merch. Profit. How do you get your information, Mr. Brecker? You might say I'm a lockpick. You must be a very gifted one. I am indeed. Kaz leaned back slightly. You see, every man is a safe, a vault of secrets and longings. Now, there are those who take the brute's way, but I prefer a gentler approach. The right pressure applied at the right moment, in the right place. It's a delicate thing. Do you always speak in metaphors, Mr. Brecker? Kaz smiled. It's not a metaphor. He was out of his chair before his chains hit the ground. He leaped to the desk, snatching a letter opener from its surface in one hand, catching hold of the front of Van Eck's shirt with the other. The fine fabric bunched as he pressed the blade into Van Eck's throat. Kaz was dizzy, and his limbs felt creaky from being trapped in the chair, but everything seemed sunnier with a weapon in his hand. Van Eck's guards were facing him, all with guns and swords drawn. He could feel the merchant's heart pound beneath the wool of his shirt. I don't think I need to waste breaths on threats, Kaz said. Tell me how to get to the door, or I'm taking you through the window with me. I think I can change your mind. Kaz gave him a jostle. I don't care who you are, how big that ruby is. You don't take me from my own streets, and you don't try to make a deal with me while I'm in chains. Mika, Van Eck called, and then it happened again. A boy walked through the library wall. He was pale as a corpse, and wore an embroidered blue Grisha tide-maker's coat with a red and gold ribbon at the lapel, indicating his association with Van Eck's house. But not even Grisha could just stroll through a wall. Drugged, Kaz thought, trying not to panic. I've been drugged. Or was it some kind of illusion? The kind they perform in the theatres of East Stave. A girl cut in half. Doves from a I'm so stupid. Doves from a teapot. What the hell is this? He growled. Let me go, and I'll explain. You can explain right where you are. Van Eck huffed a short, shaky breath. What you're seeing are the effects of Jurda Parem. Jurda is just a stimulant. The little dried blossoms were grown in Novi Sem and sold in shops all over Ketterdam. In his early days in the dregs, Kaz had chewed them to stay alert during stakeouts. It had stained his teeth orange for days after. It's harmless, he said. Jurda Parem is something completely different, and it's most definitely not harmless. So you did drug me. Not you, Mr. Brecker. Mika. Kaz took in the sickly pallor of Grisha's face. He had dark hollows beneath his eyes, and the fragile, trembling build of someone who had missed several meals and didn't seem to care. Jurda Param is a cousin to ordinary Jurda. Van Eck continued. It comes from the same plant. We're not sure of the process by which the drug is made, but a sample of it was sent to the Kirch Merchant Council by a scientist named Bo Yul Bayer. Shu? Yes. He wished to defect. So he sent us a sample to convince us of his claims regarding the drug's extraordinary effects. Please, Mr. Brecker, this is a most uncomfortable position. If you'd like, I will give you a pistol, and we can sit and discuss this in a more civilized fashion. A pistol and my cane. Van Eck gestured to one of the guards, who exited the room and returned a moment later with Kaz's walking stick. Kaz was just glad he used the damn door. Pistol first, Kaz said, slowly. The guard unholstered his weapon and handed it to Kaz by the grip. Kaz grabbed and cocked it in one quick movement, then released Van Eck, tossed the letter opener onto his desk, and snatched his cane from the guard's hand. The pistol was more useful, but the cane brought Kaz a relief, as he didn't care to quantify. Oh, a relief he didn't care. A relief he didn't care to quantify. Van Eck took a few steps backward, putting distance between himself and Kaz's loaded gun. He didn't seem eager to sit. Neither was Kaz, so he kept close to the window, ready to bolt if needed. Van Eck took a deep breath and tried to set his suit to rights. That cane is quite a piece of hardware, Mr. Brecker. Is it fabricator-made? It was, in fact, the work of a Grisha fabricator, lead-lined and perfectly weighted for breaking bones. None of your business. Get talking, Van Eck. The merchant cleared his throat. When Boyle Bayer sent us the sample of jodaparam, we fed it to 3 Grisha, 1 from each order. Happy volunteers? Indentures, Vanek conceded. The first 2 were fabricator, and a healer indentured to Councilman Hoade. Mika is a tide maker. He's mine. You've seen what he can do using the drug. Hoade. Why did that name ring a bell? I don't know what I've seen, Kaz said as he glanced at Mika. The boy's gaze was focused intently on Van Eck as if awaiting his next command, or maybe another fix. An ordinary tide maker can control currents, summon water or moisture from the air or a nearby source. They manage the tides in our harbour, but under the influence of jodaparam, a tide maker can alter his own state from solid to liquid to gas and back again, and do the same with other objects, even a wall. Kaz was tempted to deny it, but he couldn't explain what he'd just seen in any other way. How? It's hard to say. You're aware of the amplifiers some Grecians were? I've seen them, Kaz says. Animal bones, teeth, scales. I hear they're hard to come by. Very. But they only increase a Grisha's power. Jodaparam alters a Grisha's perception. So? Grisha manipulate matter at its most fundamental levels. They call it the small science. Under the influence of Param, those manipulations become faster and far more precise. In theory, Jodaparam is just a stimulant like its ordinary cousin, but it seems to sharpen and hone a Grisha's senses. They can make connections with extraordinary speed. Things become possible that simply shouldn't be. What does it do to sorry sops like you and me? Van Eck seemed to bristle slightly at being lumped in with Kaz, but he said, it's lethal. An ordinary mind cannot tolerate param, even in the lowest doses. You said you gave it to 3 Grisha. What can the others do? Here, Van Eck said, reaching for the drawer in his desk. Kaz lifted the pistol. Easy. With exaggerated slowness, Van Eck slid his hand into the desk drawer and pulled out a lump of gold. This started as a lead. Like hell it did. Van Eck shrugged. I can only tell you what I saw. The fabricator took a piece of lead in his hands, and moments later, we had this. How do you even know it's real? Asked Kaz. It has the same melting point as gold, the same weight and malleability. Malleability? Malleability? Malleability. 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 Welcome in, Bonky. Malleability. Malleability. Malleability? If it's not identical to gold in every way, the difference has eluded us. Have it. Malleability. Have it tested if you like. Kaz tucked his cane under his arm and took the heavy lump from Van Eck's hand. He slipped it into his pocket. Whether it was real or just a convincing imitation, a chunk of yellow that big could buy plenty on the streets of Beryl. You could have got that anywhere, Kaz pointed out. I would bring Hoade's fabricator here to show you himself, but he isn't well. Kaz's gaze flicked to Mika's sickly face and damp brow. The drug clearly came with a price. Let's say this is all true and not cheap coin trick magic. What does it have to do with me? Perhaps you heard over the Shu paying off the entirety of their debt to the Kurj with sudden influx of gold, the assassination of the trade ambassador from Novi Isem, the theft of documents from a military base in Ravka. So that was the secret behind the murder of the ambassador in the washroom. And the gold in those 3 shoe ships must have been fabricator made. Kaz hadn't heard anything about Ravkan documents, but he nodded anyway. We believe all these occurrences are the work of Grisha, under the control of Shu government and under the influence of Jurda Param. Vanek scrubbed a hand over his jaw. Mr. Brecker, I want you to think for a moment about what I'm telling you. Men who can walk through walls, no vault or fortress will ever be safe again. People who can make gold from lead, or anything else for that matter, who can alter the very material of the world. Financial markets would be thrown into chaos. The world economy would collapse. Very exciting. So what is it you want from me, Van Eck? You want me to steal the shipment? The formula? No, I want you to steal the man. Kidnap Boyul Bayer? Save him. A month ago, we received a message from Yulbaya begging for asylum. He was concerned about his government plans for Joda Param, and we agreed to help him defect. When we set up a rendezvous, but there was a skirmish at the drop point. With the Shu? No, with the Fjordans. Kaz frowned. The Fjordans must have spies deep in Shuhan or Kerch if they had learned about the drug and Bo Yul Bayer's plans so quickly. So send some of your agents after him. The diplomatic situation is somewhat delicate. It is essential that our government not be tied to Yul Bayer in any way. You have to know he's probably dead. The Fjordans hate Grisha. There's no way they'd let knowledge of this drug get out. Our sources say he's very much alive, and that he is awaiting trial. Vanek cleared his throat. At the ice court. Kaz stared at Vanek for a long minute, then burst out laughing. Well, it's been a pleasure being knocked unconscious and taken captive by you, Vanek. You can be sure your hospitality will be repaid when the time is right. Now, have one of your lackeys show me to the door. We prepare to offer you 5 million kruj. Kaz pocketed the pistol. He wasn't afraid for his life now, just irritated that this Fink had wasted his time. This may come as a surprise to you, Vanek, but we can hour value our lives just as much as you do. Yours. 10 million. There's no point to a fortune I won't be alive to spend. Where's my hat? Did your tide maker leave it behind in the alley? 20. Kaz paused. He had the eerie sense that the carved fish on the wall had halted mid-leap to listen. 20 million kruj? Oh, no, it's just in italics, because that's... okay. 20 million kruj? Vanek nodded. He didn't look happy. I need to convince a team to walk into a suicide mission. That won't come cheap. That wasn't entirely true. Despite what he'd said to Vanek, there were plenty of people in the barrel who didn't have much to live for. 20 million kruj is hardly cheap, Vanek snapped. The ice court has never been breached. That's why we need you, Mr. Brecker. It's possible. Boyul Bayer is already dead. Or that he's given up all his secrets to the Fjordans. But we think we have at least a little time to act before the secret of Jurda Parem is put into play. If the Shu have the formula, Yul Bayer claimed he'd managed to mislead his superiors and keep the specific formula secret. We think they're operating from whatever limit supply Yul Bayer left behind. Greed bows to me. Maybe Kaz had been a bit too cocky on that front. Now Greed was doing Vanek's bidding. The lever was at work, overcoming Kaz's resistance, moving him into place. 20 million kruj. What kind of job would this be? Kaz didn't know anything about the espionage or government squabbles, but why should stealing Boyul Bayer from this ice court be any different than liberating valuables from a merchant's safe? The most well-protected safe in the world, he reminded himself. He needs a very specialized team, a desperate team that wouldn't balk at the real possibility that they never come back from this job, and he wouldn't be able to just pull from the dregs. He didn't have the talent he needed in their ranks. Does that mean he'd have to watch his back more than usual? Oh, no, never mind. That meant he'd have to watch his back more than usual. But if they managed it, even after Haskell got his cut, Kaz's share of the scrub would be enough to change everything, to finally put into motion the dream he had since he first crawled out of a cold harbour with revenge burning a hole in his heart. His debt to Geordie would be paid at last. There would be other benefits, too. The Church Council would owe him, to say nothing of what... Okay, I'm going to finish this chapter and then I'm going to go because I am actually... Oh my god. My voice is going. To infiltrate the impenetrable ice court and snatch a prize from the bastion of Ferdan, nobility and military might, with a job like this under his belt and that kind of scrub at his fingertips, he wouldn't need Per Haskell anymore. He could start his own operation. But something was off. Why me? Why the dregs? There are more experienced crews out there. Mika started to cough, and Kaz saw blood on his sleeve. Sit, Vanek instructed gently, helping Mika into a chair and offering the Gracia his handkerchief. He signalled to a guard. Some water? Well, prodded Kaz. How old are you, Mr. Mr. Brecker? 17. You haven't been arrested since you were 14. And since I know you're not an honest man any more than you are an honest boy, I can only assume that you have the quality I most need in a criminal. You don't get caught. Vanek smiled slightly then. There is also the matter of my decapel. Decapel. I'm sure I don't know what you mean. 6 months ago, a decapel oil worth nearly 100,000 crude disappeared from my home. Quite a loss. It was, especially since I had been assured that my gallery was impenetrable and that the locks on its doors were foolproof. I do seem to remember hearing about that. Yes, admitted Vanek with a small sigh. Pride is a perilous thing. I was eager to show off my acquisition and the lengths I'd gone in order to protect it. And yet, despite all my safeguards, despite dogs and alarms and the most loyal staff in all of Ketterdam, my painting is gone. My condolences. It has yet to surface anywhere on the world market. Maybe your thief already had a buyer lined up. A possibility, of course, but I'm inclined to believe that the thief took it for a different reason. What would that be? Just to prove that he could. Seems like a stupid risk to me. Well, who can guess at the motives of thieves? Not me, certainly. From what I know of the ice court, whoever stole my decapel is exactly who I need for this job. Then you'd better be. Hey, welcome in Vale. I hope you did good. Then you'd be better off hiring him or her. Indeed, but I'll have to settle for you. Van Eyck held Kaz's gaze as if he hoped to find a confession written between his eyes. At last, Van Eyck asked, We have a deal then? Not so fast. What about the healer? Van Eyck looked baffled. Who? You said you gave the drug to a Grisha from each order. Mika's the tide maker. He's your ethereal Nick. The fabricator who mocked up that gold was a material Nick. So what happened to the corporal Nick, the healer? Vanek winced slightly, but simply said, Will you accompany me, Mr. Brecker? Warily, keeping one eye on Mika and the guards, Kaz followed Vanek out of the library and down the hall. The house dripped in mature wealth. Walls panelled in dark wood, floors tiled in clean black and white, all in good taste, all perfectly restrained and impeccably crafted. But it had the feel of a graveyard. The rooms were deserted, the curtains drawn, the furniture covered in white sheets so that each shadowy chamber they passed looked like some kind of forgotten seascape. cluttered with icebergs. Hoade. Now that name clicked into place. There had been some kind of incident at Hoade's mansion on the Geldstraat last week. The whole place had been cordoned off and crawling with Stadwatch. Kaz had heard rumours of a firepox outbreak, but even Inej had been able to learn more. This is Councilman Hoade's home, Kaz said, skin crawling. He wanted no part of a plague, but the merch and his guard didn't seem remotely concerned. I thought this place was under quarantine. What happened here is no danger to us, and if you do your job, Mr. Brecker, it never will be. Van Eck led him through a door and into a manicured garden, thick with the new nectar scent of early crocuses. The smell hit Kaz like a blow to the jaw. Memories of Geordie were already too fresh in his mind, and for a moment, Kaz wasn't walking through the canal-side garden of a rich merch. He was knee-deep in spring grasses, hot sun beaming down on his cheeks, his brother's voice calling him home. Kaz gave himself a shake. I need a mug of the I need a mug of the darkest, bitterest coffee I can find, he thought. Or maybe a real punch to the jaw. Vanek was leading him to a boathouse that faced the canal, the light filtering out between its shuttered windows. Cast patterns on the garden path. A single city guard stood at attention beside the door as Vanek slid a key from his pocket into the heavy lock. Kaz put his sleeve up to his mouth as the stink from the closed-up room reached him. I'm gonna have to end it soon because oh my freaking god. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to go after these 2 pages. I'm so sorry. Oh my god. Okay. My throat. Can you hear it? My voice is like gone. I don't know if you can hear it, but holy crap. Oh, to his mouth as the stink from the closed-up room reached him. Urine, excrement. So much for spring crocuses. The room was lit by 2 glass lanterns on the wall. Yeah, exactly. A group of guards stood facing a large iron box, shattered glass littering the floor at their feet. Some wore the purple uniform of the Stadwatch, others the sea-green livery of the Hode House. Through what Kaz now understood had been an observation window, he saw another city guard standing in front of an empty table and 2 overturned chairs. Like the others, the guard stood with his arms loose at his sides, face blank, eyes forward, gazing at nothing. Van Eck turned up the light on one of the lanterns, and Kaz saw a body in purple uniform slumped on the floor, eyes closed. Van Eck sighed and crouched down to turn the body over. We've lost another, he said. The boy was young, the bare scraps of a moustache on his upper lip. Wait! No! Dude, he lasted a chapter. No! Poor dude. The boy was young, the bare scraps of a moustache on his upper lip. Van Eck gave orders from the guards who had let them in, and with help from one of Van Eck's retinue, they lifted the corpse and took it from the room. The other guards didn't react, just continued to stare ahead. Kaz recognized one of them, Henrik Dahlmann, the captain of the Stadwatch. Dahlmann? He queried, but the man made no response. Kaz waved a hand in front of the captain's face. then gave him a hard flick on the ear. Nothing but a slow, disinterested blink. Kaz raised his pistol and aimed it directly at the captain's forehead. He cocked the hammer. The captain didn't flinch, didn't react. His pupils didn't contract. He's as good as dead, said Van Erck. Shoot. Blow his brains out. He won't protest, and the others won't react. Kaz lowered his weapon, a chill settling deep into his bones. What is this? What happened to them? The Grisha was a corporalnik serving her indenture with Councilman Hode's household. He thought because she was a healer and not a heartrender, he was making the safe choice to test the param. Seemed smart enough. Kaz had seen heartrenders at work. They could rupture your cells, burst your heart in your chest, steal the breath from your lungs, or lower your pulse so that you dropped into a coma, all while never laying a finger on you. Even if part of what Van Eck said was true, the idea that one of them dosed with Jurda Param was a daunting proposition. So the merchants had tried the drug on a healer instead, but apparently things hadn't gone according to plan. I'm going to leave it there. Oh, such a good spot to leave off. Well then, I hope you all enjoyed. That was a very, very fun stream. I really enjoyed it. Yes, we will end 10 minutes early because my throat is killing me. For those of you who are new and would like to join the Discord, I will pop it in chat. We will raid out, so grab your raid messages. If anyone has any suggestions for who we should raid, let me know. If not, let's have a little look-see. Ooh. Okay. A beautiful new blue passport. Okay. Let's send you over to someone doing art. I know this person, Nerumi. Let's send you over to her. Thank you all for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I've had a lot of fun and I hope you have as well. The next stream will be tomorrow. I've forgotten what we're doing, so I'll have to check that in a second. I think we're doing art. I'll have a look. Go show Nerumi lots of love, and I will see you all in the next one. See you tomorrow. Take care.